Hello everyone. Today we are going to be looking over some grammar basics that are essential for this communication class. This lesson will go through some of the very important grammar rules that you should be aware of in order to prepare for the grammar test and of course for the grammar policy, which takes us to the next slide. Just a reminder that the grammar policy and communications for IT is that the evaluation criteria for all written assignments will include 20% for spelling, grammar, and mechanics. If you have a perfect error-free report, you will receive 20%. A few minor errors already will lead to 10% of that mark, and then 0% if they are multiple or major errors. In other words, if it's pretty obvious that there's no effort put into correcting the grammar, that's where the 20% will come into play. A reminder also that next week, the beginning of Thursday class, we will be having a grammar quiz. It should take about half hour in total, but once again, this lesson right here will prepare you to get ready for that grammar quiz. And just a funny little meme here, your grammar is bad and you should feel bad. What this relates to is the fact that not a lot of people are really paying attention to their grammar. It's something that, especially now where we have electronic devices to autocorrect, where we use short forms such as you, one of the most common ones. We're starting to forget how important it is to be grammatically correct. Because when it comes to time for writing a cover letter or finishing up your resume, employers will be very aware of this. So the first one we're going to look at is then versus than. When we're talking about then, it's used to refer to time. So the example is, I wake up in the morning and then I go to work. And then I would work all day and then I would come home. You can kind of get the idea there. Than is used as a comparison. The number 4 is greater than the number 2. So you can see there, although they sound the same, there are some major differences. So keep that in mind when preparing for the grammar quiz and for your overall grammar. A big one here too, there, and there. Notice how it all sounded the same? Well, let's look at the differences. Use there when referring to a place. Helpful to remember here or where. So an example for a sentence would be, use there to replace they are. And before I get to that sentence, they're my best friends in the whole world. They're letting me participate in this group activity. They're letting me pay with debit. They are. We're referring to any type of place or any other person. They are doing that. And if you're ever curious to know what to do, you would replace there with they are. And does it still make sense? If not, this is where the practice does have to come into play. There or theirs indicates possession. So possession meaning something that belongs to you. I gave the ball back to Success Kid and his friends because it was theirs. I saw the person driving their car down the street. That mobile device is theirs. So once again, possession, usually a noun, right? A noun is that item that we're using, and possessiveness indicates that it's theirs. Your versus your. So this one right here is a very common one. You've probably seen a lot of memes and a lot of jokes about it. Your is to describe something that belongs to you. Your is always followed by the noun. Your, you are, is a contraction for those two words. You are. So it's kind of like the same idea there, right? You see at the end there's that RE after the apostrophe. Usually that indicates they are, you are. It's just a shortened form. So if you're ever curious to know what's going on, swap out your for you are, and if it makes sense, you've used the contraction properly. So you're listening to me on your laptop computer. You are listening to me on your computer. That computer belongs to you, so therefore it is yours. But you're taking that opportunity to listen to me using your laptop. Possessive. It's and its. Once again, very common ones that we're dealing with. Its is a contraction of the word it is or it has. More commonly, it is. It has isn't as common, but it definitely is very important. I am sick of this weather because it's too hot out. It is too hot out there. Right? You're not going to use the other one because it is without the apostrophe is a possessive once again. I am observing the car and its acceleration. I'm not saying I am observing the car and it is acceleration. I'm observing the car and its acceleration. Dropping a phone with an OtterBox case is a method to measure its durability, not to measure it is durability. It isn't durability, it's durability. So I'm hoping going through some of these already will help you to understand the differences. It's something that we're going to use for the rest of our lives. So that's why it's always a great idea to have an open mind about improving grammar overall. So number two, a lot of twos. So let's deal with these ones here. Two, of course, is the number two, T-W-O. That's how you spell the number two. My laptop has 2 operating systems on it. Dave got 2 hours of sleep last night. 2, T-O-O, is used to indicate excessiveness. 2, plenty. It is too hot. I am talking too much. I usually eat too much food. 2 means excessive. Where are you going to would not include that extra O. But sometimes I like to talk too much. That's where I'm using T-O-O. And then to, T-O, is used as a preposition before a noun or as an infinitive before a verb. So some of the examples that we use, after class, I am going to the cafe to work. So if you look at the first two there, you are going to the cafe, which is the Center for Academics and Faculty Enrichment. You're going there. The cafe is the noun. And then to work, I am going to work. Work is a verb in this sentence. Working is an action. So you are going to work. And to is used as that infinitive. I am going to the gym to work out. Once again, the first T-O, you're going there, which is the noun, and then to work out, once again, to work out. Working out is a verb. Apostrophes. So there are generally a lot of rules. When it comes to the grammar quiz, I'm just looking for the very basics. So when we're talking about something that is in a plural, you usually follow by the end of the word apostrophe and then S. And then I'm looking for the one where if we're using plural but someone's last name ends with an S, you put the apostrophe following the S. So there is a link for you right there, as you can see, grammarbook.com/punctuation/apostrophe.asp. I advise you to take a quick glance over that. I'm not going to go too in depth when it comes to the quiz, but apostrophes are definitely very important. Once again, if there is some grammatical incorrectness there, it will not benefit in many aspects of life. Capitalization. So obviously the most common form of capitalization is names. But capitalize the first word of a document and the first word after a period. Ideally, start your sentence with a capital letter. And then you capitalize proper nouns. So when we're talking about nouns, typically nouns that have a name. The Empire State Building, as you can see, all capitalized. The Grand Canyon, the Stanley Cup, right? The Stanley Cup is, once again, it's a noun that has a name to it. So when it has a name to it, that's when you're going to start using capitalization. Sentence arrangements. I remember I mentioned this in class last week, but this is once again very important to keep in mind when working with grammar and preparing reports. Fragments are incomplete sentence. Doesn't sound right. That's just an example. Usually, fragments are pieces of sentences that have become disconnected from the main clause. One of the easiest ways to correct them is to remove the period between the fragment and the main clause. Other kinds of punctuation may be needed for the newly combined sentence. Once again, here is a link that will give you some of those fragmented sentence examples and how to correct them. What I did is I visited the website and I have provided 2 examples for this lesson. So the first fragment, as you can see, if you even read it out to yourself, don't just listen to me talking, read it out for yourself and really start to identify how it doesn't sound correct. The first fragment, I need to find a new roommate because the one I have now isn't working out too well. I need to find a new roommate. And then if you think about it, you should be continuing that entire sentence. Don't just stop it there. The possible position, I need to find a new roommate because the one I have now isn't working out too well. Another example. The current city policy on housing is incomplete as it stands, which is why we believe the proposed amendment should be passed. Once again, it sounds like you can combine 2 of those sentences to make it a full sentence. If you look at the revision at the bottom, because the current city policy on housing is incomplete as it stands, we believe the proposed amendment should be passed. So once again, it's usually that period which separates those 2 sentences when necessarily you can combine them, rearranging words, paraphrasing. They're all very important. Parallelism. What parallelism is, it's a balance within one or more sentences of similar phrases or clauses that have the same grammatical structure. The application of parallelism improves writing style and readability and is thought to make sentences easier to process. So to put it all in a nutshell here, the one example that we use, he likes programming and reading. If you were to make those into 2 separate sentences, he likes programming. He likes reading. Well, why not put it together? He likes programming and reading. He does not like programming or reading. Once again, if you were to have 2 separate sentences, he does not like programming. He does not like reading. He does not like listening. Just put it all together. He does not like programming, reading, or listening. And usually when we're talking about having many of those verbs, programming, reading, listening, between programming and reading you would include a comma, and then or listening, you don't necessarily have to include a comma because or is indicating that the sentence is going to end. Pronoun agreement. When we're talking about pronoun agreement, it's something that must agree with its antecedent. We'll go through some of these terms together. A pronoun is a word that can replace a noun without having to repeat the noun several times. One example that I have provided is that without using the pronoun, the car is blue. The car is fast and aerodynamic. Instead of having to say the car so many times in between sentences, you would use something such as a pronoun to indicate that the car is blue, it is fast and aerodynamic. It is the pronoun. Keep in mind that you do not have to repeat several times about the car because the reader is going to understand that the car is the pronoun here. And then you can use it to describe more verbs about it, or more nouns, I should say. It is fast. It is aerodynamic. Those nouns are being supported by the pronoun it. I'm not saying that in this case that you should use it, 3 or 4 or 5 sentences in a row. You sometimes have to remind the reader that you're still talking about the car. But if you're just talking about the car and then you're going to use maybe 2 sentences with it as a pronoun, then it's fine for the reader to understand. And the antecedent is a thing that existed before or logically precedes another. So when we're talking about grammar, you can be sure a noun is the antecedent if you can put it back in the place of the pronoun. So my dad gave me his watch. That's the antecedent there, and you have to make sure that it does make sense. So, for instance, if I were to replace his with it, my dad gave me it watch, that's not a good pronoun. That's not a good antecedent to the watch. You're referring to the dad, who is the noun, and then, or the subject in this case, and then his watch, the watch being the noun, his is the most appropriate pronoun. So it's the most appropriate antecedent because it's something that exists, right? We're referring to that individual and his watch. So that's all I have for grammar basics. I hope that you had the opportunity to go through this and maybe learned about something that you didn't know before. This is something I'm going to introduce to you. You may have heard of it before, but Grammarly, it's an app that basically can override and detect any type of grammar errors that you're dealing with when it comes to reports. Personally, I don't think it's something that we should use because it enables us to use it to our advantage and not think about the grammar. But I will say that it is something very helpful if you are struggling and you need to understand it. They're almost like training wheels for grammar. Once the training wheels are off and you feel more confident with your grammar, I feel that this tool isn't something that we should use because we're going to become entirely dependent on it. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening. I hope this was very helpful. And a reminder again, grammar quiz at the beginning of the Thursday class for week 3. Take care now.